give the voters a chance to meet the candidates and see them in person. And so we've got a phenomenal group of really courageous, talented, competent folks that are running in the Democratic primary on May 16th. And if we can figure out with the lawsuits and everything else about the congressional races, we've got some great folks to vote for, okay? And so I just want to say thank you for showing up. Because the election on May 16th is happening. We've got 5 amendments on the ballot. We've got the Senate races on the ballot. We've got local elections in various parts of the state. So one of the things we hope you'll do is when you leave this event tonight is make sure your friends know that there is an election on May 16th. And you can do early voting through this Saturday on May the 9th. And so we really need to get folks coming out. The other thing I want to highlight is that Cleo Fields is doing a town hall tomorrow night in Baton Rouge at the Baton Rouge Community College in the Magnolia Theater, if you're interested in coming to that. And then on Friday at the state capitol, there will be a committee hearing in the Senate regarding this current, I don't even know what the right word, I'll just say kerfuffle, how about that? On the maps for the congressional races. And so, you know, we live in a very dangerous time, and we live in a state that is really taking advantage of a Republican majority in the legislature and a Republican governor to roll back the civil rights and voting rights in our state. And this legislative session has just been horrendous in terms of trying to eliminate judges in Orleans Parish, to eliminate an elected position for Calvin Duncan as the criminal district court clerk in Orleans Parish. And so I'm not optimistic about where we are in terms of voting rights and redrawing the districts. And so I was actually talking to a couple people before this started. We could actually see districts drawn for our congressional races that are intended to lead to a 6-0 Republican sweep. And so if you know people who are on the fence or who say voting doesn't matter or who cares, it's not going to make a difference, this is the time to get organized and to get mobilized. And so on behalf of the other statewide sponsors, the Bayou Progressive and Quentin Anderson, the LGBTQ caucus with the State Democratic Party, and I want to give my good friend Rustin Lloyd a shout out for making that caucus happen. The Forum for Equality, which is also a statewide progressive organization. And I really do want to say that Louisiana is really fortunate because we have great leaders in every region that are really stepping up to indivisibles. And so, if you're part of the Tangipahoa Indivisible, would you raise your hand if you've been to an event? Okay. Y'all give yourself a round of applause. You know, now more than ever, people of character and conscience and goodwill need to stand up and be counted. Whether you're standing on a corner waving a sign at an Oak Kings rally, but I think even more importantly, standing up in our communities across the state, talking to your friends and families, talking with your Sunday school class or your book club or your yoga group or whoever you associate with about the importance of voting. And so tonight I'm going to turn it over to a remarkably talented and competent young woman. If y'all don't know Bethany Viviano, you need to know. Bethany is a force to be reckoned with. She has done amazing things as one of the leaders of Indivisible here in Tangipahoa. And I am just really impressed by all of the work here in Hammond and in this region, because we really can make a difference if we stand up, if we speak up, and if we show up. So let's give my friend Bethany a round of applause.
None of this could have been possible without Melissa's amazing organization, getting everybody across the state that needed to and figuring out which candidates we needed to be in which places. So I would like to give her a big round of applause. So I'm going to start with the basic statements and kind of get us all rolling here. The most important thing, restrooms are in the back over there, or over here as you're heading this way. If you go around through these doors and out, you will get to the fellowship hall where you will be able to find snacks to keep you going. There is water in the refrigerator, both bubbly and regular. There are sweet or savory snacks. There are also our tables with our partners who are here tonight. So this particular event, Melissa just recognized the state organizers, but I would like to recognize our Tangipoa DPAC and Tangi Denson Progressives who have also been involved in the organization, fundraising, and planning for this event. Let's please give them a round of applause. So in the back room in the fellowship hall, you'll also find tables with YBL and my personal favorite, the League of Women Voters, who have been put in another room so that they are not at a partisan event. But they are here to answer any of your questions about the inactive voter list, about registration, about early voting, about how to make sure that you're on there, because, the last 5 days we've had so much going on and we've been pulled in so many different directions, and what we all need to remember is that none of this matters. Like, the inactive voter list and making sure that you show up to vote is still the most important thing. That still needs to be number 1 on our list, because if you don't vote, nothing is going to change. They need to stop pulling us in different directions. That has to be our focus. So, but we do have some other things planned, and if you guys stay until the end, I will talk to you about something cool that we have planned coming up, but I don't want to take away from what we're supposed to be doing with the candidates here for that. I do want to actually also make an announcement about the incorrect information and misleading information that's being sent out about our parish-wide amendments. I have gotten more messages about this than about anything else in this election. Never mind that we've got a governor saying that it was canceled when really they were only trying for the House, and so people didn't realize that they needed to still show up to vote. The parish-wide amendments, they are trying to make it sound as if they're going to get rid of term limits for the parish council and the parish president if you vote no. That's not what's going to happen. So I have this confirmed from the parish secretary and from the parish council chair. So if you vote no, it means that it will remain at the current 3-term limit. If you vote yes, you are voting to give them another term. You are voting for 4 terms. So please ignore any of the misinformation that's going out on Facebook, on websites, on mailers to your homes. This has been, it's actually flat out dishonest, and it's been reported to the Secretary of State. So I want you guys all to consider that, and consider if you really want another 4 years with the current parish president and parish council, and vote your conscience on that one. Just make sure that you know the information. Believe it or not, the RPAC has been doing wonderful work on that. They are also, they're putting out signs all over about the misinformation that's going on, and they were nice enough to provide us with some cards that you can hand to your friends. So back in the fellowship hall, if you look on the Indivisible Tangipoa table, you will find the Power Coalition's explanation of the amendments. For the statewide, you will find the, I can't believe I'm saying this, the RPAC explanation of the parish amendments, because it is fantastic, and they provided it to us for free on the table, and you will also find some basic voter information. It is also how you can sign up to be on our mailing list and to get involved. And we can't do these things without, I can't do it on my own. Melissa can't do it on her own. Rustin can't do it on his own. We need you guys to be involved. This is a call to action. Please get involved in any way you can. We have been trying to do better about messaging about, you don't have to be out on the street. You don't have to be attending a No Kings rally. You can also write postcards. You can also email or text bank. There are so many different things that you can do if you don't want to have your face out there, or if you're scared, or if you don't know how to get involved. We will help you with that. We will help you. We will train you, and that is our goal for this year. Coalition building and teaching people how they can get involved and making it more digestible for everyone, because democracy only works with everybody involved. So I would like to invite our candidates to go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, I actually have one more announcement. So a lot of you might remember what happened with the Hammond PD assisting ICE and some of the irregularities with that. Our own lovely Miss Callais Hines is bringing this first to the Civil Service Board here in Hammond tomorrow morning, across the street at the City Council chambers at 9:30. And it will also be, I forgot to look up the date for the next City Council meeting. I think it's the 12th. It's always the second Tuesday of the month. So I will be sending out a blast with that, but it would be great if we could show support, if we could all show up and tell them that, hey, more than 1 or 2 people care about this. Everybody here does. This is taking resources from our communities, and they're acting illegally, and they admitted it on video. So it would be fantastic if some accountability could happen there. To explain how we'll be running tonight's run of show, I'm going to call Rustin up, who is my fantastic co-moderator, and I would like to invite the candidates to come up to the stage, please.
There are plenty of times that I feel completely overwhelmed, and I feel like I'm tapped out and I just can't do anything else, and I look at Bethany over here, who is just doing all the things, so kudos to you, man. I love it. All the flowers. All right, so just very quickly, some housekeeping rules for tonight's debate, tonight's town hall. We're going to end up doing 90-second answers. If a candidate is mentioned by another candidate, they will have a 30-second rebuttal period. Once we get through everyone's answers, everyone will be answering the same questions. Once we get through everybody, if everyone's answers are pretty similar, then we'll move on to the next question. If there's a pretty diverse set of answers, then we're going to go back through and everyone will have 30 seconds to tell me why your thought process is the best on this particular subject. I think that's about it. Questions? Oh, sorry. So like you said, so we have some comment cards or some question cards that you can fill out. We're going to be going through those. We have a set of questions that we received ahead of time that address different subjects, so healthcare, affordability, et cetera, et cetera. And so if we have a ton of similar questions, we're going to try and combine those as best we can. We know the time is limited, so we're going to try and do our best to answer as many questions as we can and try and give us a broad swath of answers here. Cool. All right.
Cards can be found either over here to the left of the stage, or when you enter, there is a table back in that little room. You can find questions there as well. Sorry. All right, our first question is to kind of introduce our candidates to you. Why are you running and why now? What is the core argument you're making to Louisiana voters about why you're the right person for this seat? We're just going to go ahead and start from the end.
Great. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nick Albares, and I'm running for the United States Senate here in Louisiana. I guess it's appropriate I'm over here because I'm number 1 on the ballot, so I'll be the first thing that you see. But I got into this race because I felt like at the federal level, what we see is chaos right now. And I looked at my 3 kids. So I'm a husband to a teacher and an artist, and I'm a father of 3 boys. I want them to grow up in a world where they can look up to their leaders, where their leaders are solution-oriented and focused on dignity. When I qualified for this race, I said, my political philosophy is simple. Every person is important to me. Every person has dignity, and our public policies ought to reflect that. So I've been rooted in community throughout my career. I've worked to bring people together and find solutions to the most pressing issues of the day, whether that's healthcare or criminal justice reform or environmental issues. And I'm proud to have the support of people like Calvin Duncan in my campaign. And then also the support of people like John Bell Edwards, who I work for as a policy advisor, where we expanded health coverage to 500,000 people throughout the state of Louisiana. And now we see threats. So that's why I'm in this race. I look forward to the questions and talking with all of you tonight. It's great to be here.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Lauren Jewett. I am running for Congress in Louisiana's 1st District. I am a National Board Certified Special Education teacher of 17 years, and I am running because I want to see somebody in Congress who stands up and shows up and fights for people, and that's what I've been doing my entire career in the classroom. I am a union member and I'm a community advocate. I have spent a lot of time in my career advocating for our most vulnerable students, our students who have disabilities, our students who are of immigrant status, our students who are Black and brown, our queer students. And so I know what it means to have proximity to the real issues that are on the ground. And the person that I'm running to replace, the person that is in the seat right now, has been in Congress for 18 years, and prior to that has been in the legislature for 12 years. That's 30 years, which is over 75% of my life. And so I am running to ensure that we have representation, that we can see a difference in what it sounds like and what it feels like and what it looks like. And again, I have that proximity to the issues, being in the classroom every day. I would be honored to represent the people in Louisiana. I'm a fighter. I am part of the lawsuit that is going on right now. It is unjust and unconstitutional what is going on. So I'm looking forward to everybody's questions tonight.
Good evening. I'm pretty sure that you all could be doing a lot with your night, so I really do appreciate you all coming in. My name is Lindsay, or Rubia Garcia. I at one point in my youth was a professional Latin dancer, which is where the nickname La Rubia, the blonde, comes from, if anybody was wondering. I am the daughter of a Marine, the baby of 10, the proud mother of 2, a 15 and 13-year-old. There's so many things that I can say. The main reason why I ran is for this moment right here. I was a teacher for 10 years. I taught history for 10 years in New Orleans. At the end of my career, I lost that job, ultimately fighting for the men who were killed in the Hard Rock collapse, and their bodies were left inside of the building for over 311 days. It cost me my career, but it gave me an opportunity to travel around the country in 2020 and 2021 to see on the front lines what that life was like. Ultimately got hurt, and I had a lawyer's number on my arm, and I said to myself, you might want to become a lawyer because you're probably going to need one going forward. So I just graduated from the Southern University Law Center last May, focused in voting rights litigation, which again put me in this race because I felt like what was going to happen happened. I didn't expect it to happen this soon, but that is immediately after he issued the executive order. That is why I was the lead plaintiff in the lawsuit that filed the lawsuit challenging Governor Jeff Landry's overreach and executive action. That is ultimately why I am running, because I can come over all of the different policy issues that I want, from healthcare to education, across the entire board, but ultimately defending our Constitution and your rights as voters being primary among them. Thank you.
All right. Hey guys, my name is Jessee Fleenor. For you guys that don't know me, double S-double-E, that's my grandmother's maiden name there. That way you can find my website, votejessee.com. You know, I'm just a farmer. I'm a vegetable farmer from Rondra, Louisiana, right down the road. I did run for this seat in the 5th District 8 years ago, in 2018, kind of the first time we were in this mess, so to speak, though it is worse this time around. And, you know, I'm a single father of 3 kids, and I've got a lot to do. Somehow we're the only creamery licensed to make cow's milk cheese in the state of Louisiana, so I was trying to finish up a 20-gallon batch of cottage cheese before I made it here, so I'm sorry I was a little bit late. That being said, things have really deteriorated in this country in the last year, and I think a lot of us see that. And it's been really hard on us, politically, emotionally. It's been hard on our communities. And so, you know, at the end of last year, I was lucky enough to have extra vegetables left over and participated with a community organization called the Southern Dignity Not Detentions Coalition. And we delivered fresh food to thousands of families too afraid to leave their homes in the state of Louisiana because they might never see their kids again, all right? And so that was the impetus for me getting into this race. We have to push back against this abuse. And you know, we gotta do what we can this year, but we got more to talk about later. So I appreciate you guys.
Good evening. I'm Gary Crockett. I was born in Tallulah, Louisiana, and I now reside in New Orleans. I'm a 24-year retired Navy veteran, a business owner of 4 companies. The reason that I'm running are for a few reasons. I'm sick and tired of what I'm seeing. The wages are too low, and the rent is too damn high. We have no idea what our children are going to do after they graduate. I have 4 kids, 2 of them are in college now. One will graduate this year, one next year. And the way things are going, no one is in Washington fighting for you. No one cares about what is happening with Medicaid. No one cares what is happening concerning our health care. What you need in Washington is a fighter. And that's the reason why I'm running.
Good evening, my name is Tania Nyman. I'm one of the congressional candidates in the 5th District. I am a native of Louisiana. I grew up in New Orleans. I've lived in Baton Rouge for the last 24 years. I'm a former instructor in the Department of English, but for the past 14 years I've been a community advocate, fighting for public schools and fair maps and against pernicious ITEP applications and trying to get especially a fair map for my East Baton Rouge Parish School Board. And one of the reasons why I'm running is because, of course, everybody is aware we're at a crossroads here. We can see the ways in which the democratic structure is being eroded at the federal level, and certainly they're eroding it at the state level as well. I mean, I would echo General Albares' words. Our democracy was hijacked long ago, right? Why do I think I'm so appropriate for it? One of it is the experience I've had fighting at the local level and seeing the ways in which a lot of the times people are encouraged to support efforts that, to support efforts that aren't actually going to produce the benefits that they think, because they have a marketing campaign that is designed to convince people it's a good idea, but if you scratch beneath the surface, you can see that it doesn't work out that way. The other reason is because I'm the daughter of a public school teacher. My father had started in the paper mill when he was in high school. The only thing that changed the trajectory of his life is he served in World War II, got the GI Bill, which allowed him to become a teacher. So I'm a product of public schools, and I worked really hard to make sure my kids could go to public schools. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, perfect. It's back on. Thanks. So we all know that the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act last week. God, it feels like it was a million years ago already. Jeez. How will you take a stand against the Callais decision? And should we start with Lauren? Deb?
Is this still, okay, there it is. When the news came down, I didn't think that we would be in this spot a week ago, but I did join the lawsuit that Lindsay filed, and I'm fighting back. I'm fighting back by encouraging people to still go out to the polls, telling them to vote on everything that is on their ballot. I have a unique situation in my case is that I was the Democratic nominee. I had no challenger in the primary. And I also qualified in this race based on petition. Some of you may have signed the petition or collected ballot petition signatures, and that is a unique situation in this particular case. And so in our lawsuit, I have intervened in the Callais decision because of this particular situation. And so anybody who did sign that petition, you are part of history. You are part of pushing back on this because we actually have a claim. And I mean, many of us were on a call earlier about ensuring that we are pushing back and not having just a situation where we're capitulating to the situation that we are right now in. It is a through line through our history in Louisiana from our 1898 Constitution, where we had poll taxes and property requirements for Black people to be able to vote. We had non-unanimous juries that were part of that Constitution. There have been so many issues that have been barriers to access, and so we have to keep fighting back and showing up.
Oh, goodness. I haven't slept since that decision came in. I was campaigning in Monroe at the time that the decision came in, and then we got word that Governor Landry was considering suspending elections. So I stayed up all night researching that decision while also considering what actions he might take, and he went one of the directions, which is why I stayed up all night. I sound more raspy than normal, because it wasn't about what I am going to do, which, number one, we should pass a nationwide ban against gerrymandering, period, point blank in the story, Republican, Democrat, across the board. That's number one. Number two, as I said, all the policy that we're going to sit here and talk about, none of that matters if we don't defend the Constitution, if we don't establish checks and balances, if we don't defend the separation of powers, if we don't fight like Thurgood Marshall and literally go in and just litigate and litigate and litigate. So that's why ultimately I filed the lawsuit with council, and that's ultimately why I tried to bring everybody in on board so that we could have a united front of going at this together, because we are all in this together. So I'm not my father didn't raise me to draft a strongly worded letter. He was also an attorney, and he said, if you're going to draft a strongly worded letter, then you better file it. And I decided to, and that's ultimately not just what I have done, what I will continue to do, and I do believe that you need a fighter. And that's why I'm running for Congressional District 5, because I believe this seat is winnable, and I know for sure that I'm a fighter.
Yeah, well, I agree with Lindsay on that. We've all been working together. We've gotten very little sleep since last week. I'll say everyone on this stage believes in the promise of America and believes that we need to work hard to improve our Louisiana communities. And so we've had the rug kind of pulled out from under us there. We've all been raising money and spending our time and energy away from our families and our jobs to do this. And so this unprecedented step by the governor is completely unheard of and unacceptable. I think people are still coming to terms with the fact that this decision is likely going to cause the largest drop in minority representation in Congress in the history of this country. It's going to completely change the landscape and bring us back decades in terms of the progress we've made against racial inequality. I'll borrow, a phrase from one of my favorite books that recently came out last year. It was actually about the war on Gaza. But I believe that someday everyone will have always been against this, all right? We are living through unprecedented evil at the top of this country, and we need to be on the record pushing back so that when we look back years from now, we can still remember that there was part of America that did not agree with all of this nonsense. Okay, and so I'm also a party to the lawsuit, and we're fighting hard to make sure that your voice is heard and that your votes are counted.
Well, I concur with everything that's been said so far. I was honored to be added to the lawsuit, and in addition to that, I filed one as well on behalf of Calvin Duncan. As much as it was for Calvin Duncan, it's actually for all of us. Because if they continue to trample over the Constitution, they would not only take his rights, but mine and yours as well. So what I'm doing in the future is, I'm going back to my ways as just being a litigator. And what I'm going to do is take them to task on a regular basis. First concerning the redistricting, and after that, we'll be concerning everything else that they do to trample over your rights. It's time now for the Democratic Party and the independents to be proactive, to plan ahead, and to fight for everyone. The long game is what the Democrats have to start to do. That is exactly what they did with us with Project 2025. We sat back and we were only able to react. But now it's time for us to decide who's going to be our next Supreme Court justices. Who are we going to put forward? And what are we going to stop before they get there? Thank you.
Yeah, so in 2014, just after the Shelby County versus Holder decision, the Baton Rouge Area Chamber pressured my school board to downsize that board from 11 to 9 districts. And it was, the argument they put forth was that the board would be more efficient. And it was clear that that wasn't the case. What they were trying to do was make the district so large that they would be more susceptible to money. And that the out-of-state billionaires that were pouring the money into our school board elections in order to get a majority on the board would be able to prevail. So I got involved in fighting against that with One Community, One School District. And so that also led me to pay attention. Unfortunately, we lost that fight. They downsized the board to 9 districts. They adopted a racially imbalanced map, and then billionaires poured money into those elections and adopted a majority of candidates, a majority of people who supported charter schools, which erode our voting rights because they're governed by unelected boards. So the attack on our voting rights is wholesale. But what's important to note about that, I circled back after 2020 to fight for a fair map following the census, and I documented the ways in which all that money pouring into elections, it doesn't matter, party or race, the prevailing candidates were the ones that were aligned with the business community. So in the districts that were African-American Democrat versus African-American Democrat, the ones that were in favor of public education got shot out. Same thing for the white Republicans. And that, I think, we need to start paying more attention to. The way in which Citizens United is manipulating our elections, and it's not Republican versus Democrat or white versus black, it's money versus the people.
So right now, we are facing the most anti-democratic chaos since the time of Jim Crow. And so let's be clear about the journey we've been on. We saw on January 6th the big lie lead to an insurrection on the United States Capitol. And now here in Louisiana, Jeff Landry has been unleashing this anti-democratic chaos onto our state. First, by trying to push out, through legislation, the duly elected clerk of court in Orleans Parish, Calvin Duncan, who I worked with day in, day out. My kids got involved in this campaign. It was a formative experience of civic engagement to knock doors and wave signs for Calvin. And now they eliminated that position in a majority black city before he was able to take office. They also pushed out duly elected black judges in the city of New Orleans. And now the Supreme Court takes this unprecedented action to undermine the will of the voters, 1/3 of whom are black voters here in the state of Louisiana. So we need to push back, and we need to push back hard. And I'm glad to be united with my fellow candidates on this lawsuit. I'm glad to be pushing back. We need to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act so that we can bring the Voting Rights Act into the 21st century. Thank you.
What do you believe is the single biggest driver of economic insecurity right now? And what would be the first thing you would fight for in Washington to make everyday life more affordable? What can government do to bring down prices on gasoline and food? And we're going to go ahead and start with Lindsay.
Well, it'd be great if we weren't in a war in Iran right now in order to open up the Strait of Hormuz and we weren't dealing with $5 in diesel and the like, but that again circles it back to every single policy issue that we are currently talking about right now, circles back to the constitutional crisis that we are in. From the affordability, to the education, to the healthcare, to the foreign policy, all of that circles back to, we are literally looking at a current point in time where the tree of liberty, every branch of government is literally on fire, and we are dealing with leaders who are still trying to negotiate with the arsonists still currently holding the matches. We are not going to get past, we are not going to be able to address affordability or healthcare or education. My personal experience of driving I've probably gotten about 8,000 or 9,000 just in a couple of months square miles of the district, which is 14,000 square miles for perspective. It's infrastructure. From the water wells, to the roads, to the bridges. I'm particularly sensitive of that because of my work with the men who were killed in the Hard Rock collapse. Businesses will not show up. Businesses will not build. The kids can't get to school. You're literally driving down roads that are impassable up until you deal with the infrastructure component of it, up until you start pouring into the communities. That's when the communities will start to thrive. You can't, as Mr. Crockett said, the rent is too damn high, from housing to groceries to the like. You have to deal with the infrastructure, and you have to also deal with the housing crisis, and more importantly, the children, and investing into our children. I'm going to stop because she's going to stop, and I don't want to get up there.
Well, I agree with most of that right there. You know, the thing is, it's true that life has become unaffordable for many people in this country, and especially in this, one of the poorest states in the Union. And so, you know, a few basic steps we need to take right away. Double the minimum wage. It has not been increased in 16 years, since before I had children. And I've got 3 kids now. You know, my youngest is 7 years old. You know, I got one about to graduate from high school. So we need to go ahead and double the minimum wage, at least to 15, probably more like $20 an hour. Another thing we really need to do is increase our support for workers' unions. Okay? We need to get rid of this whole right-to-work nonsense in Louisiana and get back to supporting the men and women who work with their hands as electricians and factory workers, teachers and nurses, and farmers, you know? And so, but you know, the main thing that I would fight for in terms of this topic in Washington, and some people laugh at this, but I think we absolutely need to eliminate the concept of billionaires in this country. You should not be allowed to be a billionaire. And so, people don't understand, $1 billion is $1,000 million, okay? You cannot spend all that money in your entire life. And it's actually a major problem for capitalism itself. I believe in capitalism. I believe that you should be able to start a business. You have a good idea. But $1 billion, not to mention $300 billion, we're about to have a trillionaire. That's too much money being bottled up at one end of the spectrum when you go eliminate the concept of billionaires.
Well, the first thing would be introducing through legislation in Congress a new minimum wage on the federal level. Each state has its own minimum wage, and none of those can be lower than the federal. So the first thing we need is a higher minimum wage. I've worked, when I first started working, I remember the minimum wage was $2.90 an hour. And the fact that after all these years, and we're talking like from 1979 to now, we're still just at $7.25. That's pretty horrible, knowing how inflation has affected us. The other thing is, we need legislation where we go into crisis, whether it's a war or a natural disaster, that all prices are held where they are. We need a freeze on all pricing when that happens. We have a situation right now where it's an oil crisis, and we're paying more, and we don't use any of that oil. None of the oil over in the Middle East are we using. So it's time to stop that, and legislation is what's going to help.
Yeah, so I'm running as a newer deal Democrat, and I chose that because of my family history. My paternal grandfather worked for the Works Progress Administration to repairing roads and digging ditches. And like I said, my father was able to, I kind of included the GI Bill in part of that too. He got the GI Bill, which allowed him to go to college. You know, Social Security is part of the newer deal, which we certainly need to shore up and raise the cap on, and so that it can support seniors and make sure they don't fall into poverty in their elder years. You need the progressive income tax. You need that adjusted. You need the minimum wage raised. All of that was part of the New Deal. And the way in which things have been eroded for this country have been the way that those policies have been targeted and rolled back on since the 70s and 80s. So I know I was able to get through college because I was able to work through college. I waited tables, and I could pay rent and pay my car note, and now you can't do that anymore. They hold out tops like it's a great boon, and it's not, because if you have one bad semester, you lose the ability to go back to college. When I went to college and I started, it was $796 a semester. It was $396 for my brother, because he's 8 years older than I am. So you could already see the curve and the trajectory. The ways in which we are making it harder for people to work and get ahead is all part of the ways in which they started tearing down not just those social policies that help people, but the antitrust policies that also make businesses be competitive for one another. And so it's broader than that, but that's why I chose that theme.
So as we go through this, I was thinking about making this part of my last answer, but just an intermittent reminder, I'm Nick Albares, running for the U.S. Senate. This is going to be on your ballot on May 16th or during early voting. You have candidates up here for different offices, but United States Senate. On this question, I want to put a fine point on the topic of billionaires. I looked this up recently, and a billion seconds, if we look at the time, is 11 days. A million seconds is 11 days. A billion seconds is 31 years. That just gives you a sense of the scale that we're talking about. If I were a millionaire, I think if any of us were millionaires, I would feel kind of good, but like a billion is just at a whole nother level. So we need to demand that billionaires pay their fair share. When we do that and we close the tax loopholes, we're able to invest in the things that should be priorities, like universal health care, like universal child care, like paid family leave that's national in scope. So we do need to raise the minimum wage, we need to more than double it, and we need to index it to inflation so that it goes up automatically over time as costs rise. And we need to end and reverse the cuts to Medicaid that this administration and this Congress put in place. That will be a #1 priority for me. We need to pass the Fresh Food Act to incentivize grocery stores to go into rural areas. And we need to investigate corporate landlords to make sure that they're not price gouging.
I definitely concur with many of my fellow candidates up here. I do believe that we need to raise the minimum wage. We need to make sure that we have affordable child care. I am a union member and I stand on the side of workers. We need to ensure that our workers have the right to organize and that they are not fearful of repercussions should they choose to organize. So we do need to protect and have passage of the PRO Act. I want to talk a little bit about what we face here in Louisiana. Lindsay talked a little bit about infrastructure. We have poor environmental infrastructure, and that is a driver of economic insecurity because it is connected to what people spoke up here about corporate interests and billionaires. They are coming in and they get tax credits. Let's talk about the carbon capture issues. We have federal tax credits that are being given to companies to come in and they are making us sick. So we have petrochemical companies that have been here for a long time, and yes, they have provided jobs, and I don't want to discount anybody who has worked in those industries because it has afforded them a job with benefits. But long term, we have to think about the environmental impact of Louisiana being a dumping ground for pollution and for toxicity. If we think about the healthcare industry, if we're constantly wedded to that because we have to keep going to the doctor because there's issues with asthma, issues with cancer, that is an issue that is an economic insecurity. So I think we need to look at the poor environmental infrastructure that we've allowed here.
Thank you, Lauren, so much for bringing up healthcare. That segues nicely into our next question. And this will be, Jessee will start. What will be your first federal priority to improve healthcare access and affordability in this region? And what steps will you take to expand access to affordable healthcare, especially in rural parishes, and address the potential closures of rural hospitals such as Lally Kemp and Hood Memorial, which is also a VA community care provider?
Fantastic. Yeah, you know, healthcare is obviously an essential need for every single human being. We all have physical bodies, and they don't always work right, all right? And so sometimes we gotta go to the doctor, and it is too expensive to do that in America, all right? We're one of the only industrialized nations in the world that does not have some type of single-payer universal healthcare system. And so I support an incremental approach towards a single-payer system. First of all, we need to restore the Affordable Care Credits that were left to expire last year by the Republican Congress. We obviously need to reverse the Medicaid cuts. This 5th district that I'm running for has some of the highest rates of Medicaid use in the entire country, including my children. All right, and so we need to reverse those cuts. And then ultimately, though, we need to eliminate the concept of private health insurance. All right, I'm sorry I'm up here doing all the economic populism, but health insurance and healthcare should never be a for-profit business. Okay, it just can't be. You cannot be making money off of sick people. Okay, so every other rich country has figured out how to figure this out on the back end through taxes, to where when you get sick, you go to the doctor, we fix you and send you home, okay? And then it's all done with, all right? Single-payer healthcare.
I like what you said, and I'm going to add some nuance to it. First of all, I believe that the subsidies for the Affordable Care Act should come back temporarily until we come up with a real solution. In addition to that, I believe that the same health care that the senators and representatives have in Congress, that all of us should have. There's no way you should be representing the people and you have care that is better than what we have. The public option that we need to have should be as such, let me go back. So when the subsidies come back, they should be as such that they're paid to the individuals. Therefore, the insurance companies can come and compete for your dollar, as opposed to these exchanges where you're locked into just, these particular. I like what happens on the Medicare side, where they compete for your Part B and others. And that's the same thing what happened with these subsidies. In addition to that, until we get this new program that will be beneficial to all of our seniors, 55 and older, they shouldn't pay for health care. They've taken care of us all of this time. They've made this country what it is for us to live in right now. There's no way that they should be paying for health care. And we should expand to make sure that we give them memory care and other things that is required for them. Thanks.
So it sounds like we have a consensus so far that the ultimate goal is Medicare for all at some point, but in the interim we need to do some things to make sure people can access care, like getting the affordable tax credits, care tax credits. One of the things I think we need to be on the lookout for, the One Big Beautiful Bill, which is about to gut the 5th District and endanger all of those public hospitals. We need to absolutely protect those, because if we ever do get Medicare for all and a single payer, if you don't have your public hospitals, then the profits are going to be siphoned out through the private hospitals. And that's why I would say that they privatized the hospital in East Baton Rouge Parish. They're in anticipation of giving us universal health care, they're trying to privatize all the hospitals. So we need to be on the alert for that and fighting back. We also need to watch out for those Medicare Advantage plans. Because right now, the studies have demonstrated that they actually pay more per person, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're providing better care. It might just be that those private insurers are giving a little bit more money for those individuals. And so we got to watch out for the ways in which privatization, it's always marketed to the people as, it's going to be a better product. But more often than not, it's actually about creating profits for a different entity and also undermining the public option. And so we need to be on the lookout for those things as we move towards an effort to get Medicare for all.
Healthcare is a human right. When I worked with Governor Edwards, we worked to protect and expand health coverage for 500,000 people. And I was on the front lines in the legislature when they tried to roll it back. And so this is something that I fought on and won. And this is about a legacy, because right now, Republicans passed $1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid that go into effect January 1st of next year, after the midterm election. So I've been fighting to remind everyone that healthcare is on the ballot in November. And as was mentioned, Julia Letlow voted for these cuts for a district where it's the third most reliant on Medicaid in the entire country. 300,000 people are projected to lose their health coverage over the next decade just here in Louisiana if these cuts go through. So my number one priority is reversing these cuts. You know, when I worked for Governor Edwards, not a single rural hospital closed thanks to the Medicaid expansion. That's why this is so important. So number two, we have to strengthen the Affordable Care Act and renew the enhanced subsidies. And I am ready to sit down and work with anyone in order to expand Medicaid further, in order to expand Medicare, so that we can get to this true vision that we all deserve health coverage that's affordable, that's accessible, that's universal for every single person.
One of the pillars of my campaign is affordability and healthcare. Healthcare should not be a privilege or a luxury. We all deserve it. It is a human right, like Nick said. And I am in support of Medicare for all. We have to ensure that our children have access, and for families that need that. And so some of the things that weren't mentioned that I do think we need to look at as well is when we think about healthcare, sometimes in healthcare plans, it doesn't cover everything that you might need. So we have to look at comprehensive healthcare. Think about dental and vision and mental health. These are things that people also need access to and that can be quite expensive or not part of a plan because, again, they want people to pay out of pocket for those services. Another thing is we also need to understand that people who are in need are elderly or disabled. We need to ensure that we have cost-effective measures for home care services so that people can get the care in the home that they need. And lastly, it is Nurses Day. My mother is a nurse, and we need to, yes, and Mustin is a nurse too. And we need to make sure that we're supporting our nurses. These are the people that give us our care. So if we're not supporting the things that our nurses need, down in New Orleans, they've been on strike 6 times. They just ended their strike. We need to ensure that they have the proper supports they need to take care of us.
I'll try to make quick work of this. Healthcare is a human right. Comprehensive coverage, including dental and vision. Medicare for all. I definitely agree with our representatives and senators should not have better health care coverage than us. And then the same thing, universal health care coverage. That being said, in the 5th Congressional District, we have a very large, the largest elderly and also veteran population, which also goes back to my previous answer of infrastructure, which also includes broadband access. In the 21st century, in 2026, we still have overwhelming amounts of people in East and West Parish, for example. Over 60% of people still don't have broadband. And if you are an elderly person or you have a grandparent, that means that they must drive hours in order to get the health care services that they need on roads that they aren't sure that are going to damage their cars or not. Which means that they need to have the broadband access so that they can access telehealth, which goes down not just for the physical well-being, but also the mental health services. We have 17 veterans that are committing suicide per day. This needs to be addressed, and I don't need any other seconds because I feel like I've properly, adequately addressed the measure, and everybody across the board, healthcare, ultimately, he took my line, it's a human right there. We shouldn't be paying billions of dollars for bombs going across the sea, but we don't have, that are providing for a country that has no healthcare there, but we don't have
Gary.
One of you were starting with, yeah. I know who you are. All right. What would your ideal immigration reform package look like, and what are the first priorities you would pursue? Could you repeat that? What would your ideal immigration reform package look like, and what are the first priorities you would pursue?
Okay, so I think we just need some humanity in the laws that we already have. Before this current administration, we were sending more people back to where they lived in the past than we are right now. So I think with some humanity, we can continue to do that where it's warranted. Fairness needs to come into the process. And one of the problems is that people aren't being afforded due process, and they're also not being afforded true representation. So we need both of those things. What makes America great is this diversity. And we need more of it. With that diversity, there's a lot of innovation that comes about. So legislation that makes sure that we implement what the law states, but also has some humanity, as well as some great representation for those when they have a hearing.
Yeah, so I think the first place to start would be clawing back some of that money for ICE. I think that this recent time period has demonstrated that that organization is irredeemable. We certainly need some kind of reasonable immigration. We need a protected border, and we need to be able to allow people to traverse due process on the path and everything. But ICE needs to be replaced, and I can echo that, I suspect. One of the things I want to bring up that doesn't get enough attention is I've had long-time concerns about like even H-1B1 visas, which actually bring over skilled workers from other countries. And we rely on them, a lot of our industries rely on them. They say that we don't have the skilled workers, but I think what we need to recognize is that fix should be temporary, because that should be indicative of the fact that we are not providing the people who live in America the opportunities to get the education they need in order to achieve those jobs. So a holistic understanding of what our immigration policy needs to do. I also think we need to look at our foreign policy, because one of the things that pains me is the ways in which our current immigration crisis is fueled by the U.S. foreign policy in Central America back in the 80s, and the instability that that foreign policy created, so that so many people feel compelled to come to the United States in order to provide for themselves, and then we demonize them. So we need to always be looking at the big picture as well as looking at the crisis right in front of us.
So on immigration, we do need comprehensive immigration reform. And we need to create legal pathways for people to come to this country and to come out of the shadows and have a pathway to citizenship. We need enforcement that is respectful of the dignity of every person. Because we can't have roving bands of untrained, masked men that are using racial profiling and that are violating due process and murdering people in the streets. That's just unacceptable, and we cannot fund that type of behavior in America. But as it relates to what we need to do, we need to work with our partners, countries throughout our hemisphere, in order to create pathways for people to come here. We look at trade, and we look at it across borders. Well, immigration is part of this system. And so it has to be comprehensive. And there was a comprehensive bill that was before Congress that the president said, we're going to squash that bill because I don't want to have this bipartisan bill passed into law, because I want it to be a campaign issue that I can run on. So we can make bipartisan progress on this issue when we come together and when we're solution-oriented, and we have at the center the dignity of every person.
So I live in Jefferson Parish, where there's been a lot of issues for years with ICE in Kenner. There's an agreement between the police in Kenner and 287G agreement. And so my feelings as a teacher is, one, we have detention centers here, and there's detention centers across our country that are locking children up. We should be outraged by that. That should not be allowed to happen. I do believe that we need to defund and abolish ICE. It has gone way too far. It has violated people's due process. And when we look at the 14th Amendment, it says no person shall be deprived of their due process rights and liberties. So that's no person, not a citizen, no person. And so we have to get back to understanding more human-centered policies, and that immigrants in our country have built a lot of things. In our area of New Orleans and the surrounding areas, I mean, it was our immigrant population that really helped ensure that our homes were rebuilt and that they were doing the work that other people were not doing. And so I don't believe that we need to be demonizing people, and that we need to get into this issue where we are being hateful towards people that are our neighbors. These people are our neighbors, and they contribute to our country, and if they want to get to a pathway towards citizenship, we need to help them, and so that is the policies that I would be in favor of.
So I want secure borders, but you also at the same time also have to provide a meaningful path to citizenship at the same time. Now, obviously, like I mentioned, my Latin connection is La Rubia. When Chief Bovino came down, I was a part of the caravan that followed him around and saw basically what I saw was a PR campaign as he went through Kenner with the assistance of Kenner PD. What I also, I was called upon by people, some of these people sitting in this very room just a couple of weeks ago, because my friends know me as the pull-up queen. Because if you need something, I will definitely pull up at that time. So when we heard the raids that were going on here, that Hammond PD was being utilized in order to barricade these men inside the room, and they waited 12 hours, ultimately what we saw was Hammond PD by half a dozen or more sitting out there all day long. And I said to them, I sure hope there isn't any emergency going on in Hammond right now, because if there is, you all are sitting outside this house right now and not policing the streets and doing the proper thing in order to protect the people in your community. And I also told them that they are going to be the ones, per the Constitution, they will be under the ones, no different than Derek Chauvin, who will be prosecuted, who will be held civilly liable for the violations of the constitutional rights of Americans under color of law. A badge does not give you that, and I will give you also a warning. What Donald Trump was unable to accomplish on January 6, 2021, now he will have a personal federal police force in order to accomplish at the behest of ICE. They will be deputized and they will be there, and that is my biggest fear with ICE. So I am also for defunding ICE and refunding the people.
Well, a lot of good things were said right there. The number one thing I would say on immigration here is that we need to completely abolish ICE. Completely, 100%. Goodbye, good riddance. The murder of Alex Preddy and Renee Good is a stain on this country's history that will never be erased. Okay? But the very least we could do is get rid of that criminal organization. Okay? We need to go back to a reasonable immigration policy like we had before the 9/11 era, where we had the Border Patrol protect the border, know who comes in and out of this country, but at the same time, we don't need to pretend that we're somebody that we're not. Everybody in this room here and every American in this country comes from somewhere else. Okay? We took over this place and basically killed everybody that was here. I'm sorry. And so every single one of us has ancestors from a different continent, whether we were forced to come here, whether we came as indentured servants, or however we got here. And so every single one of us is an immigrant and has immigration in our blood. The other thing that I will say is, back in the day, conservatives used to talk about family values. I'm not sure they talk about that anymore. They just talk about whatever Trump tells them to talk about. But I'll tell you, the most important family value is to keep families together. And right now, we are splitting them up and leaving children orphaned as we deport their parents. So let's keep families together.
am going to take just a moment of personal privilege and say I like your button. It says be pretty good.
It's one of my most cherished possessions, supporter gave us.
I love it. All right, next question. We're starting with Tania here. Women's rights are being attacked across the spectrum between the SAVE Act, the executive order requiring proof of citizenship to hold a bank account, including accounts you already own, and the broad range of legislation in the post-war climate. How do you intend to codify equal treatment of the genders under the law? Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not talking into the mic, am I? I'll read that again. I'm so sorry. Women's rights are being attacked across the spectrum between the SAVE Act, the executive order requiring proof of citizenship to hold a bank account, including accounts you already own, and the broad range of legislation in the post-Roe climate. How do you intend to codify equal treatment of the genders under the law?
Codify equal treatment of genders under the law. Huh. The SAVE Act is completely problematic because of the way in which it is surreptitiously eroding people's ability to access the ballot. And that's not just happening to women. I mean, Oklahoma is given a prime example of denying people access to driver's licenses, right, because of their ID based upon their biological, their birth sex. But when it comes to women, I guess the women's rights, the one I'm prepared to talk about has to do with the Roe v. Wade, and that one is one I do want to talk about because the thing that troubles me about that issue is the way in which the narrative gets framed. On the pro-life side, I understand that people think that they're going to prevent a tragedy by allowing the government to usurp a woman's right to bodily autonomy, but I don't think that is going to prevent tragedies. It's just going to create other tragedies, whether it means that women are going to access unsafe abortions, or whether they are going to have a child they are financially or emotionally unprepared. So the solution is fair wages, right? Fair wages, access to health care, affordable housing, and affordable child care. But the interesting thing is on the pro-choice side, is similar, because it's not just about access to an abortion, which we often get fixated on, it's also about making sure a woman has a right to choose to have a child, and that means that's fair wages, so they can afford to keep a roof over their head, affordable housing, access to health care, access to reproductive care, and if you had those two groups fighting for those things, we would be unstoppable.
So I believe that we need to codify Roe so that we make sure that there are universal laws across this country that ensure that government is not involved in personal medical decisions. So that needs to be number one. We need to be focused on that. Secondly, we mentioned the SAVE Act. And the SAVE Act, we talked about voter disenfranchisement earlier. This is really a modern day poll tax because it requires you to spend money to get other forms of citizenship, and especially goes after women. Because women may have changed their names, especially if there was a marriage, and their forms of ID don't match. So again, it's getting at voter disenfranchisement. We have to stand firmly against it. But then we also need to work affirmatively for women's rights. When I worked with Governor Edwards, every year we would introduce legislation aimed at ending pay secrecy and promoting equal pay. Every year it got shot down in committee. But we kept educating, we kept pushing, and we need to do that at the federal level as well. So I believe that in order to get to true equality, we have to recognize the dignity of every person, and that means the dignity of women. This is something that I've fought for throughout my career, most recently at Volunteers America, where we stood up a substance use treatment program specifically for pregnant and parenting women. And that's what we need to bring, that's what I'll bring to the United States Senate as well.
I believe that we do need to have structures in place to protect and codify Roe and a women's right to choose. I want to talk a little bit about what was mentioned with the SAVE Act and with these restrictions that are being put on women coming down the pipeline. There's already been things passed that have deprofessionalized positions and professions that women often hold, teaching, social work. We have to roll that back because you're already messing with the livelihood of women when you have positions like that in place. Beyond just codifying Roe, I mean, we know in this state we have pretty draconian laws when it comes not just to abortion, but access to reproductive health care. So when we talk about comprehensive health care, it's not just dental, vision, and mental health, but it's also access to reproductive health care because they are going to come for that. They are going to come for birth control, they're going to come for IUDs, and all the other methods that women use to make choices about their body. And so we need to ensure that we have protections around that. And you know, this is something that is often decided more on a local basis, but I do think that we need to talk also about sex education that is comprehensive, not just teaching kids about how their body works and as age appropriate, but also talking about consent and what healthy relationships look like. So I would be in support of that, and also just parameters around our people working on the Hill and around sexual harassment, because that has been a big issue that has been coming up lately.
I apologize listening to everybody. I am exhausted as a woman to be in this position. Women make up less than 1/3 of statewide legislatures, but we make up 50% of the population. And as a woman who has had to seek reproductive care, I understand firmly the anatomy of my oppression, which is that I produce the workers, I produce the soldiers, and I also produce the prisoners. And I fundamentally believe that if you are truly pro-life, then that means from the womb until the tomb. If you want to prevent unwanted pregnancies, then I'm going to need you to provide access to the education that would prevent that. I'm going to need you to provide birth control and those types of things. You cannot be so pro-life that you are pro my death if I decide to go in and make the decision in order to access an abortion and to make that decision for myself. As a baby sister of 8 older brothers, I posited to some of my brothers, how would you feel if I started passing some legislation about you guys? And that didn't get a well reception, I can tell you that. But what I would encourage you to do is to go read the Dobbs versus Jackson decision. And it's not just about women. Because what Justice Clarence Thomas says in his dissent is that he basically wants to go after everything except Loving versus Virginia, which is interracial marriage, which also puts our queer family in the crossfires of that. So it's not just an attack on women, it's an attack on all of our brothers and sisters across the board. Put it our way.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I believe the question was that gender equality. I would support, I don't think this has been mentioned yet, the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment. We are really close to that. There are only a couple of states left, and we could actually have this written into the Constitution where women in particular would have similar protections. It's crazy to me in 2026 that we're back to the 60s basically in terms of reproductive health care in this country. I have 3 children. I love children, but that doesn't mean that it's always the right time for everybody. Okay, I have a 13-year-old daughter. I have 2 boys and a girl. She's my pride and joy, but she's just coming up on puberty. She's going to be in high school. She's going to college. I'm not so dense that I don't think that she will eventually be sexually active. And I want her to have all the rights and privileges that my partners have had, that her grandmothers have had. And it's crazy to me that she would be in that position in 2026. And so I absolutely support codifying Roe. One thing I'll note is that I think it is important that we are careful how we talk about equality. Equality means, equal access for everyone across the board. So as Democrats, we shouldn't be having messages like the future is female. I have 2 young boys, and that really, it makes them feel like they don't have a place in the future. And I think it has turned off a lot of men in this country. So we need to be aiming for equality and not overshooting. When we overshoot, we end up shooting ourselves in the foot.
You know when politicians come and they always try to say exactly what they think you want them to say? I'm not that guy. I'm not a politician, number one. But when it comes to Roe versus Wade, I feel that women have the absolute right concerning their medical care and concerning their reproduction. But I would like some guardrails. One of the things that I don't want is women getting rid of babies in their last trimester. So unless it's medically necessary. And there are times when that is medically necessary. But guardrails, I feel, are important in general. I agree with the fact that the SAVE Act should not happen, as it takes away quite a few rights. And one of them can be the woman's right to vote, as well as others. So with everything that we look at, sometimes things just aren't as general as we think they're going to be. And we need to look at some of the specifics as well. When it comes to those that are so pro-life, I say that by the same token, if I'm that pro-life and I can put that much money into probably concerning having a child, I should put my money where my mouth is as well to help support that same child.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and do 30 more seconds on that one, and I would like to point out as a point of law that there is no state in the United States that allows a third trimester elective abortion. So, yeah, everybody can go ahead and discuss that now. I'm sorry, what's the question? Am I the person that's on this program? 30 seconds. Right, so we had said at the very beginning that if there was a very divergent answer from everyone else, that there would be 30 seconds for responses. And Gary just triggered a very divergent answer from everyone else. So we're allowing 30 seconds for rebuttal from everybody. And so yes, you would be starting.
Yes, so the late trimester question, yes, it's my understanding that they don't really happen. But the confusion with the Roe v. Wade, I'm going to draw on my personal experience. My first pregnancy almost killed me. I was a little more than 6 weeks out from the due date, and I was diagnosed with what they used to call an acute fatty liver pregnancy. I don't know what they call it now, I've forgotten the name, but it's sort of like your advanced health syndrome. It means that my blood was so toxic it would no longer clot. When I was concerned, like, oh my goodness, I'm dying of liver failure, how's my child? They said, well, he's fine because his liver works just fine, but the cure was to, quote unquote, terminate the pregnancy. 6 weeks out, that's okay. He spent a little time in NICU, but I think under the current climate, some doctors might be concerned about terminating a pregnancy to save my life, which is what it did.
Yeah, I think that it's important that we be really clear and that we don't fall into traps, because essentially this is a narrative that Republicans have tried to advance to say that there are these elective third trimester abortions, because the reality is that women who carry a baby to term, they are choosing to have that child. Nobody chooses to have a child. The only reason why you would terminate a pregnancy at that point is if there is a threat to the woman, to the child, and so that's a total red herring, so we need to be clear about that.
I think we need to be very clear about the dangers of misunderstanding and misinformation, especially when we are not medical doctors, but to lean into the experience of our medical professionals and women. I think we have gone off that track and allowed people who don't have that lived experience of the unique situations that have been happening right here in our state. And so I will just reiterate that we shouldn't fall into the trap of allowing dangers of misinformation to lead to dangerous situations for women.
To be clear, what Roe versus Wade did was establish a woman's right to choose up to viability. That is what Roe did. So when we say codify Roe, we're talking about codifying a right that existed for half a century that should have been codified a long time ago, and that plenty of privacy protections are encompassed up within that. And I second all of that. That is what the Republicans and the Republican Party are really good at pushing out and trying to make you feel guilty off of red herrings, as was just propagated and talked about by Mr. Albares. So, once again, codifying Roe, a woman's right to choose.
Yeah, you know, I'll say, since we only have 30 seconds, something I'd like to say on this issue is that pro-life is a lie, okay? And I can prove it to you. You go up at any of these pro-lifers out there and ask them when their birthday is, okay? They're going to tell you the day that they were born into the world and started breathing. Not a single one of them is going to give you the day that their parents had sex and conceived them, okay? All right, so pro-life is a lie.
Okay, so from the statement that I made earlier, it's very easy to say something is a red herring, but I'm talking about from empirical data. And if you go to the CDC site, they talk about how often this happens. It's very rare, only about 1% doesn't happen, but it does. And that isn't being said in order to scare you. I'm just saying that there should be some guardrails.
For medical purposes.
All right, this next question was submitted by Layla from Career North Shore. Do you believe that businesses open to the public should have legal right to refuse services to LGBTQ plus people? And if not, what specific federal protections would you support to ensure that discrimination is not allowed in public accommodations?
So the short answer is no. We need to stand firmly against discrimination of all types. We need to pass the Equality Act in Congress to ensure that businesses and to ensure that employers do not discriminate against people that are working at a job and just because of their status as identifying as LGBTQ, that they can be fired for that reason. And we need to put in place strong federal legislation that ensures that no business can turn anyone away because of who they are or who they love. So that's going to be a short answer because it needs to be very ironclad, very clear. Discrimination is wrong, period. And we need strong legislation to enforce that at the federal level.
Yeah, I do not believe that businesses should be turning away people because of who they love and who they are, and I do believe that we need to pass the Equality Act without exemptions. And I think about an act like that, or a situation like that where somebody's being turned away, where they want to seek service or be a customer. That's one act of exclusion. That is an act of exclusion that can snowball into many acts of exclusion. As I work in a school, and we have to welcome anybody who comes through our doors, kids and families, and make them feel accepted. And so we need to have protections in place for workplace protections and to make sure that people feel welcome in our communities. Like I said before, these people are our neighbors. They should be treated with respect. They should be treated with compassion and dignity. And when these things are allowed to happen, that often, again, leads to situations of which we have in this state, which are people who are in the LGBTQ community are often targets of violent crimes and hate crimes. And so we should be wary of situations that start off and maybe they don't seem like so much, but they can lead to larger issues of exclusion for and violence for our members of our community.
I am a proud endorsed candidate of the Forum for Equality, and I'm even wearing my pin that you are safe with me. Because you are. I do not believe, and let me just start off my history speaking for me. The founding fathers were deists. We are not founded on a Christian nation. Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration, literally wrote his own Bible for perspective. There are plenty of primary resource documents that talk about that, and I'm saying that to say that that's one of the main arguments that is used on religious grounds to deny people their right to equal dignity. That should not be tolerated. It does not matter who you are, it does not matter who you love, what bathroom you choose to go to, who you call God, what your bank account looks like, your zip code. It does not matter who you are. Everybody deserves equal treatment under the law, and one constitutional right does not give you the right to circumvent somebody else's constitutional right.
Well, absolutely. You know, I'm of the mind that all people and all animals are actually born bisexual. You know, I'm going to go ahead and say that out loud. Let's get that going. Everything else is basically cultural pressure. So this idea that, oh, you know, we're not going to allow your kind around here is total nonsense. You know, I remember 2004, the Republicans hated gay people. Now they may have moved on from that and they decided to pick on trans people. You know, we need to be coming at these issues from a place of compassion and understanding, treating people with dignity and respect no matter how different they are from our walk of life. And so that's where I come at these issues. I believe that people deserve to love who they love. We need to pass the Equal Rights Amendment without exceptions. Or the Equality Act, rather, and move on from all this silliness where we're all so obsessed with who has who in their bedrooms and what their genitalia looks like. Okay? So, yeah, equal rights for everybody.
Okay, I believe that every human deserves the right that each other human has as well.
Yes, so the question is whether businesses should be guaranteed, right? Excuse me, repeat the question.
Specifically businesses that are open to the public.
Right. So one of the best examples is the cake case in Colorado. In that place, a gay couple went to a bakery and asked the baker to make them a cake for their wedding. The baker did not refuse to sell them a cake, he refused to decorate the cake for them. And so the court case found that, well, he didn't deny them service, but he did refuse to decorate the cake, which became a freedom of speech issue. And so that went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court punted on it. But as I think it was Ruth Bader Ginsburg pointed out, we are on a collision course for the right to free speech with the right to equal degree services. And we need to recognize that in the ways in which we are trying to force businesses to behave in a way when really we need to be focusing on the government. Because a lot of the times it seemed to me that that's what they were trying to avoid to do. It was the government that bombed the Oklahoma Wall Street. It was the government that put... We are on a collision course with the right to free speech, and I don't want to start getting into that war, because everybody has the right to free speech.
So we had another divergent answer. If everybody would like to follow up for 30 seconds, you're not required to, but go ahead if you'd like to.
I stand by my answer.
Can we get a little bit more elaboration? What was the divergent? Oh, I was asking the divergent answer.
Oh, so all of you said yes, except for the last answer, which was no.
I would just reaffirm my right to the the Equity Act, the Equal Rights Act across the board. Doesn't matter who you love. No business, regardless, no constitutional right should supersede somebody else's constitutional right. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion does not get to dictate who you love or who you're going to, in a public setting, who you're going to provide to and select and choose. And I stand on that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you know, I think most Republicans actually agree with that too. I mean, can you imagine a gay baker who refused to make a cake for a straight couple? They would freak out. All right, so yeah, that's total nonsense.
I didn't see my answer as divergent. I certainly respect the right for gay marriage and the right for gay couples and all of that type of stuff, but I do think we need to recognize that, again, he didn't refuse to sell the cake. He refused to engage in an art, what he considered an art act, and that is a right to free speech. And I remember back in the day when the ACLU would actually protect the KKK's right to parade on the streets. And I actually think that is the thing that is under the right to free speech. We have to be willing to listen to divergent viewpoints. We cannot start with denying people the right to their opinions. The fact is you have the right to be a bigot in America. We have the right to make sure they do not get the right to put it into law. It should not be written into law. But you can be a bigot, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I would just reiterate my point. I do not think that businesses that are open to the public should deny someone based upon who they are or who they love, period.
All right, next question is from Dr. Bradford from the Sierra Club. What are your priorities as it pertains to, I'm sorry, I have trouble with this handwriting here. As it pertains to, I'm so sorry. We were so prepared. I'm so sorry. What are your priorities as it pertains to the Make Polluters Pay nationwide effort to hold industry accountable? One more time, sorry. What are your priorities as it pertains to the Make Polluters Pay nationwide effort to hold industry accountable?
So we need, did everyone hear the question? The question was, what do we need to do to make polluters pay? And we need to demand that industry that creates a mess, they clean up their mess, right? That should be common sense. And everyone deserves to breathe clean air and to drink clean water. And right now, what we need to focus on, in my estimation, is making sure that our regulatory agencies are able to do their job. So I did my master's degree in public policy at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. And I had the opportunity to serve in the Obama administration as a graduate fellow one summer with the White House Council on Environmental Quality. And I got to know some amazing professionals there and at the EPA who are doing this work. Right now, they are in large part being muzzled. They're not able to do their job to regulate the industries that are polluting communities all across this country. So we need to make sure that our regulatory bodies can do their job to enforce the Clean Air Act, to enforce the Clean Water Act. And we've just started to see improvements during the Biden administration on investments in renewables and then also in enforcement of those important acts. So that's number one. And number two, when industry does pollute, we need to make sure that they pay for it. They pay individuals and also communities so that there's remediation. That's a critical component as well.
So I already spoke a little bit earlier about the connection with healthcare and our poor environmental infrastructure here in the state of Louisiana. So I do believe that we need to hold our companies that are causing pollution and health risks. We need to hold them accountable, and they need to be regulated, because that is making our people sick ultimately. I don't support these tax credits that are being allowed for projects like the carbon capture project. We need to talk about issues like happened here in Roseland with the Smitty's explosion. I mean, that is impacting our children, is impacting the clean air and the clean water. and people need to have recourse for those things. And so there needs to be regulation and accountability from these companies. They shouldn't be allowed to run amok. People shouldn't be allowed to profit at the expense of people's health long term. And so that's kind of where I stand on those issues when it comes to our environment and holding our polluters accountable. We should not be a toxic dumping ground. I know this has been said in many ways with the voting rights issues, that we are kind of a canary in the coal mine, but we are at the front of climate crisis here in this state, and we need to show some courage and push back on these things, because it is hurting our people ultimately.
I'm not sure if anybody's seen what's happened in Utah over the last couple of days. The citizens of Utah tried to get their local body to prevent data centers and the like, and they completely ignored the citizens there and moved forward with it. In Eastern Oregon, Amazon just settled for over $20 million because of the concentration of nitrate that has now gotten into the water as a result of the data centers there. And I attended a forum with General Honore, and he pointed out something that's so simple when you think about it. We're giving billions of dollars in tax credits for carbon capture to store the carbon and taking people's lands in order to do it, but we're doing that while at the same time passing legislation that prevents you from suing a company for a climate crisis they say doesn't exist. If it doesn't exist, then why are we giving subsidies to a company in order to store the carbon and capture the carbon underneath if it's not a problem? Why are you taking the steps that you are taking? I am all for industry. I think people think that I'm anti-capitalist, and I'm not. I'm not afraid of having certain people sitting at the table and eating more. I just think that there shouldn't be people sitting at the table while starving, while also dying as a result of the health consequences because of the actions that people are taking. So I am full up to and including not just civil, but also potential criminal liability for negligence for the acts that they take whenever these potential projects erupt, like they did in Satarsha, Mississippi, where you had to evacuate an entire town and send 50 people to the hospital because you didn't regulate it properly. So I'm for regulation and I'm for accountability across the board.
So yeah, this is pollution and the like is an issue that is very close to my heart. I'm an organic farmer, all right? I've got a degree from LSU in political science, and then I started a vegetable business. So life is long and curious, but I've been growing vegetables using only organic OMRI approved products for over 20 years. So the idea that somehow when we try to treat the environment with more respect, that it cuts into our bottom line or it's too hard to do is a lie, okay? Regulation is incredibly important in this space. It's regulation that keeps bleach out of your milk and lead out of your water and your drinking, your children's toys, rather. You know, regulations have been attacked by the Republican Party for so long that we've forgotten that they are the things that protect Americans from the harms of industry. Okay, and so I absolutely believe that we need to get back to a common sense approach to actually protecting the environment. We have an EPA now that is absolutely non-functional. We've just loosened regulations for how much mercury power plants are allowed to put out. Mercury, okay? So these people have absolutely no idea about basic science or human health. The cancer rates in this country have skyrocketed in recent decades, and that has everything to do with pollution and industry being irresponsible. So we need to regulate that and protect our environment.
So the key word for me is stewardship. We have a project that is developing in the Congo, and one of the things that we ask every miner that wants to come there is, how are you going to be a good steward of this land and your people? And that's what we need to start asking here in America and in Louisiana as well. Are you going to leave this land and this people better than you found it? And how are you going to do that? That is key. We need to have teeth in legislation to make sure that that happens. In addition to that, we need to make sure that we have ordinances concerning business license and permitting on the parish level and the city level to make sure that they don't just walk in just because they have a permit from the state in order to do business.
Yeah, specifically, and you can go to my website when I run out of time, you can read it yourself. We need a moratorium on the data centers because, as Lindsay pointed out and others pointed out, they are exactly contaminating the area. But it's not just about that. AI is going to dramatically transform our society, and right now we are abdicating all control of that to billionaires who love money more than anything else. And we certainly need to make sure other people are guiding the development of that industry. We also need a moratorium on carbon sequestration or carbon injection wells. The sad truth of the matter is I would love to blame that solely on the Republicans, but that 45Q tax credit is actually part of the Democratic's climate initiative. And so it's one of those places where within our own party we need to start having some tough conversations about the way in which Louisiana has been made the sacrifice zone for the nation and the world. And it's time for us to push back against that. And very often, sadly, it's done through the tax structure, even the local issues. I would say that I think that probably that 1972 Constitutional Convention in Louisiana that should put the tax rates in the Constitution, which effectively prohibited the parishes from being able to tax those petrochemical industries, is what created Cancer Alley. Because they could no longer, one, benefit from the profits that were being generated within their parish, but they could no longer discourage additional petrochemicals plants from locating there. So a good look at our tax structure, and then finally Trump rolled back those emission standards. But if all of our petrochemical plants are allowed to self-report, it doesn't matter what they are, we do need to get that in place and make sure that there's some other independent review of how much emissions they're issuing.
So this next question is actually just going to be, it's not going to be 90 seconds, it's just going to be a single answer. It came from the crowd. What committees would you like to serve on?
Oh, it's not 90 seconds.
No, I mean just what are you interested in? What do you want to serve on?
Oh, health, education.
Judiciary and oversight.
You know, my degree is actually in international relations with a concentration on conflict resolution in the Middle East, which has stayed relevant since 2003 there. And so I would like to be on the foreign policy committees there.
For me, it will be defense and intelligence, because right now we have the least. So, right now we don't have people that are qualified to run this country in the area of defense and intelligence.
I think my skills would be put to use well in the education committee, and that's because a lot of people don't realize the ways in which the federal education policy has facilitated the destabilization of the public education system here in Louisiana, and often with the great help of the Democrats who have signed on to the charter school movement. Charter schools are run by undemocratic boards. They siphon our tax dollars out of this state and out of our communities. And thank you very much.
All right, so for me, it would be the Health Committee. So in the Senate, that's Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. Then also I would join the Foreign Relations Committee. Part of my undergrad was in international peace studies. I think we do need to end the military adventurism that's going on. And so changing our foreign policy to one of being a true global leader for peace. I see you reaching for the sign. Yeah.
Single answer.
Sorry. So health, foreign relations, and appropriations, because I believe budgets are moral documents.
Closing question. And this will be back to the 90-second mark. If you could pass one piece of legislation in your first term, what would it be and why?
So I think that, thinking about one piece of legislation, going to the United States Senate, one of the reasons that, I got into this race is because I've written legislation before, I've worked committee rooms, and I feel like I'm ready to hit the ground running on day one. And as I've said, a number one priority for me would be reversing the cuts to Medicaid in the one big ugly bill. Because in that bill, they cut taxes for billionaires while cutting health care for the people that need it the most. Just putting a fine point on this, once again, I mentioned it earlier. 300,000 people here in Louisiana are projected to lose health coverage because of this big ugly bill. With Governor Edwards, we expanded health coverage to 500,000 people. Someone at a forum recently came up to me afterwards and she said, Medicaid expansion saved my life. And it's continuing to save my life because I'm able to afford the medicine that I need. And for so many people, it means preventive care. It means cancer screenings. It means mental health. All of these things that are essential for everyone to thrive and meet their highest potential.
So the things that I am running on and that I care about in my campaign are affordability and healthcare access, quality education, environmental protections, as I've spoken about tonight, and our constitutional rights. Right now, we are dealing with a lot of executive overreach, and there's a lot of constitutional overstep. And so I could say all the bills and the priorities that I want to pass, and that would be great. But if we don't win the House, but the Senate is one, or if the Senate is one and we don't win the House, all the meaningful legislation we want to pass all day is going to get to the president's desk, and we will not be able to get that effectively into law. So I am with a group of candidates across the country that is running, and we are committed to filing articles of impeachment on day one because this is the wealthiest bill in the class. And so I am committed. That is my committed action, because I feel like everything else would be very much harder to accomplish if we don't address that and address the fact that we need to impeach the president and file those articles of impeachment and address the enablers who are also allowing that to happen, because there is enablers behind him that are allowing that to occur. So that's my action.
This is perfect because I get to close out exactly where I started, so this is wonderful. So I will tell y'all exactly what I told the chair of the Democratic Party, and of which he said I'm going to circle back in 2 hours, and I hope you have a more positive campaign slogan. And I said, you see these 10 toes right here, sir? They're going to be planted exactly in the same place. Because I want to talk to you about affordability. I want to talk to you about healthcare policy. I want to address education. I want to address social justice. I want to address the healthcare and environmental justice and all of these things. But if you're expecting me to go back to District 5 and to tell the people of District 5 that I'm going to make all these promises, but I can't give them a how, just like Lauren, I am also a courage candidate. If it's not ICRIR, I don't know what we're even talking about, and that is impeach, convict, remove, imprison, and then repeat. Impeach, convict, remove, imprison, and then repeat. I've been told, now I only got 90 seconds, hold on. Now I've been told that that's a little bit more aggressive, but if you're not willing to address literally the orange elephant in the room, you're not worried about me. It's not just me as a candidate, you're going to lose me as a constituent, which is the reason why I joined this party. You have to address that orange elephant in the room, because what will happen, you will get control of the House. You will pass bills. Some of us have watched Schoolhouse Rock. We know how a bill becomes a law. It will go to his desk and it will die. I will get on the judiciary, I will issue subpoenas, and then they will ignore the subpoenas, and who's going to prosecute them? Would have been Pam Bondi, Todd Blanche? No. So I'm not making promises that I cannot fulfill to you. That's one of the reasons why I am running for you all. If it is not that, then I really, honest to God, do not what we're talking about. And so the only, you hear the kids talking about 6'7"? The only 67 you need to worry about is the 67 it takes in the Senate to convict.
I obviously agree with that. At the same time, me and Lindsay are friends. We do a lot of these forums and stuff together. We do see this slightly differently, though that's not really the question, and so maybe I should just get to my answer. We are going to have to peel some of these people away, is the thing. And I do think last time that really did backfire. They thought we were somehow persecuting this man who has done so much damage to this country. And so we can discuss that type of thing later. When it comes to the one piece of legislation that I would pass if I had a silver bullet, abolishing ICE comes to mind, wealth inequality. But I think for me, the thing that keeps me up at night is the way that we are racing to the bottom in this country in terms of our social cohesion. We're drifting apart, all right? We are drifting towards civil war in this country, and that's the truth of it. And so we need to figure out ways to come back together. And so if I had to pass one piece of legislation, I would pass an act of Congress to outlaw partisan gerrymandering, okay? And we just need to make all of the districts in this country as competitive and compact as possible so that we can start moving back towards the middle and we can start treating each other with dignity and respect again instead of being one part of one team or another. We're all Americans first.
So mine would be a lot simpler, I think. It would be a Financial Fairness Act, and those three components of it would be no limits on the amount that seniors can make after being on Social Security, a flat tax of 15% for everyone in every company, and $15 minimum wage.
So the way I framed my campaign platform was that, we have to protect our constitutional rights and we have to protect election integrity so we can do all the other wonderful things we've talked about up on this stage. But what I would focus on then is what actually allowed Trump to get into office, which was Citizens United. We need to get Citizens United really hard, because that is what is allowing the unlimited funds into elections, that is allowing the takeover of the Congress. It's also allowing all this money into campaigns that is shaping these narratives to get us pitted against one another, when actually there's a lot of common ground that we could find if we weren't subjected to so much misinformation. And so getting Citizens United overturned so people cannot pour unlimited dark money into our elections and into our issues is the key thing that I think could then allow us to continue on and do all the good things that we really want to do for this country.
All right, so I want to take a second. We got through a lot of the questions that came from the crowd and that came in from the different committees that we had emailed ahead of time. But there are some questions we were not able to get through that were one-offs, that only one person had asked rather than 5 or 6 people. So I'm going to read those to you guys, and I hope that at some point you will make public statements on these, because I do want to make sure that everybody in this room's voice and their questions are heard. Do you have any plans to make political spaces more available for young people? Would you vote to impeach Trump, and why? Sorry, that came up twice. That came up twice. Which crime would be the best one for you to impeach Trump on? Oh, the list. For the Senate candidates, do you support abolishing the filibuster in order to pass Democratic priorities? What will you do for young people? As a teenager, should I be afraid to go to school for fear of a shooting? What do you plan to do to join the gun control fight? So that's what the people here would like to hear more about going forward, and I'm really sorry that we didn't get to that, but we're already at time.
Bethany, are you going to email those to us?
I can email them to you if you guys
that would
like.
be great.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
So I want to thank everybody for coming. So I had teased that if you stay until the end, we have a little bit of fun news. As you all might have heard, there is now a petition to impeach Landry, and I have the pages here after this. Obviously, this is going to be one of the best things that we can do to address what's going on in the state right now and address gerrymandering, right? Get rid of the person who's doing it and show them that we will hold them accountable. So I'm going to need like 2 minutes to get back there, right? But at the indivisible table, I have the pages. I need every person in this room to put your name exactly as it is on your voter registration and your address exactly as it is on your voter registration, and do not touch the last two boxes. Those are for witnesses, all right? So unless it is the person after you that is printing their name in that witness box, not signing, printing legibly, unless it is the person behind you doing that, you cannot witness yourself, just leave a blank and I'll take care of it later. So, and if anybody from here is not, anybody here in this room is not from Tangipahoa Parish, you will need a separate sheet. You can only have one parish per sheet. So if it's not Tangipahoa Parish, I need to label it and I need to separate it out, okay? But I'm hoping to get the signatures. And I hope, you know, a bunch of different groups are finally deciding to join together. I've been running these indivisible monthly calls of all the leaders of all the indivisible groups across the state every month for over a year now. And every time I'm like, okay, so why are we not doing more with this group? Why are we not doing more with that group? Why are we all running around like chickens with our heads cut off doing the same thing? And the one good thing that's come out of all of this is that the groups are finally agreeing to work together. We are going to be spending this year doing coalition building, and that's one of the things that this is starting. This is going to be every group across the state, all of the big ones working together, not all trying to do the same thing and using our energy for the same thing at the same time, but picking places and being organized, and you guys are going to get to be part of the beginning of that. Please do also sign up for the mailing list for Tangi Dems or Indivisible. The QR codes are back there on the table where you will be signing if you have any interest in continuing to do more, and I genuinely hope you do. And then the last announcement that we've got is that Lindsay put together a meet and greet at Benny's after this, and I really do feel like we all genuinely need a drink after talking politics, so I hope you join us, and just for some mingling, right? I will meet you guys in the back room in 2 minutes.